Hello everyone, my name is Patrick and I'm your facilitator today, and you're most welcome to our channel, Sam Martins. And today I'm going to take you through integrated science. Integrated science. Integrated means what? We have merged several sciences together, that is chemistry, biology and physics. So, and on that note, I'm going to take you through International System Unit. In short, we call it SI unit. Yes. Now, what is International System Unit? An International System Unit is a standardized. International System Unit is a standardized. System. It's a standardized system used in measuring quantities, that is accepted globally, globally. What does that mean? This means this is a system that is accepted by all the countries across the world. If you go to South Africa, this is a system that, if you go to South Africa, you find out that if you find a certain quantity that you can find there, like for example mass, you find out that mass, the same way we measure it here in Kenya or in Germany, it's accepted worldwide. Now, for today, we are going to measure to look at the types and the examples of the quantities. And we start with the first type of quantity is basic quantities. We have basic quantities. Basic quantities. What are basic quantities? These are quantities that are fundamental. They are they are quantities that cannot be derived from other quantities. So I write for you here. The other name for basic is fundamental. Fundamental are quantities that cannot be derived. They are just quantities that cannot be derived. That's why we call them basic quantities. A good example of basic quantities we have mass is a basic quantity. We have length is a basic quantity. We have temperature. We have luminous intensity. I'll have to wrap here so that we can have a look at the basic quantities. Well, let me just wrap the whole of it so that we look at. We have said that types of quantities. We look at first of all types of quantities. Types of quantities. The first type of quantity we have is basic quantity. The basic quantity is also called fundamental. Then we also have another type of quantity called derived quantities. Derived. We can just call it derived quantities. We are looking at types of quantities. The first one is basic or fundamental. The second one is derived quantities. Now, let's look at one of the quantities called basic quantities. So, we look at basic. What is a basic quantity? Basic quantity. A basic quantity. What is a basic? If you meet someone and then ask you what is a basic quantity, you will tell them that is a quantity is a quantity that cannot be derived. That cannot be derived. Derived means what? It cannot be extracted from elsewhere. It's fundamental. It's the foundation of other quantities. So you cannot derive it from elsewhere. That's why we are calling it a basic quantity. We go to the next type of quantity we are going to discuss is talking of basic quantity. Talking of basic quantities, I wanted you to know examples of basic quantities. Examples of basic quantities. Let's just wrap here so that we can have a look at the examples of basic quantities. Examples of basic quantities. Examples of basic quantities. Of basic quantities. The basic quantities as we are discussing are, the first one is mass. Mass. So under that we will be coming to discuss how is mass measured in our next lesson. The second type of quantity is length. That is another basic quantity. Another one is luminous intensity. Luminous intensity. The fourth one is we have temperature. We have temperature. And the fifth one we have amount of substance. Amount of substance. Amount of substance. Amount of substance. That's another type of basic quantity. The sixth one is electric current. Electric current is another type of quantity, and another type of quantity we have is time. Those are the basic quantities that we are going to look at. Examples of the basic quantities: we have mass, length, luminous intensity, temperature, amount of substance, electric current, and we have time. Those are examples of basic quantities. They are usually seven basic quantities are these ones that we have highlighted here. Then we go to derived quantities. Derived quantities, we go to now derived quantities. Derived quantities. Then we start looking at each and every quantity, how you can find how you can measure each and every quantity. So we have derived. We say derived quantity. A derived quantity is a quantity that is extracted, or for you to find the measurement of finding that quantity, you have to extract it from the basic quantity. So we say is a derived quantity is a quantity that is derived or extracted from basic quantity, from basic quantities, from basic quantity. That is it. And examples of derived quantities, we look at examples of the basic quantities are derived quantities. We have one is volume. Volume, as I said earlier, that for you to call it derived, this means you have to extract some measurement from the basic quantity. Like for example, finding volume, you have to extract the length, the width, and the height, which is just the measurement which is basic from the previous explanation on basic quantities. The second one is density, and the third one is area. So these are some of the derived quantities. These are just examples of derived quantities. So as I explained to you earlier, that derived quantities are quantities that are derived from basic quantities. So any quantity that can be derived from a basic quantity is a derived quantity. One of them is volume, density, and area. So up to that point, I will wish that now we start looking at each and every quantity and its SI unit and how to find that quantity. So I beg to end there for today, but in our next lesson we'll be discussing about the SI unit of all the basic quantities and the SI unit of all the derived quantities. See you when you see me.